Hello, welcome to today's webinar on the turnkey solution for childcare business success. We're going to get started here in just a minute. While we're waiting for folks to sign in though, please take note of the QR code located at the bottom right of your screen. You'll want to scan that code or follow the URL you see there in order to take a quick survey and enter in for a chance to win a $100 Amazon gift card. We're going to give away two Amazon $100 gift cards today from this webinar. And we're going to announce one winner at the end for people who are still here till the end. And the other gift card winner will be randomly selected from our survey respondents, and we'll notify them by email afterwards. Also, please take a moment to locate the question window at the bottom of the On24 console. And that's where you can feel free to ask questions during the presentation or even just say hello. Once again, welcome everyone to our webinar today, the Turnkey Solution for Childcare Business Success, a deep dive with Caroline Jens from Procare Biz Help. Before we get started, I just wanted to mention a few housekeeping items. Number one, don't worry, we can't see or hear you. You have video and sound off during this presentation. Also, as I mentioned, there is a question box at the bottom, and we will have some Q&A time at the end to answer any questions that you guys have for us. And then also, if you do run into any technical difficulties, it's best to try to make sure that you don't have any other software open on your computer during this time. Perhaps clear out any of the browser tabs, and if you need to, also you can refresh your browser tab, and that may also assist. And just a quick note, since you are joining us here for our Procare webinar, I just wanted to mention who we are. Procare is a leading expert with over 30 years of experience in childcare business software. We help you manage everything from billing to attendance, enrollment, registration, and so much more. We do encourage you to check out more about Procare if you have not done a demo or talked to us yet before. It'd be great to follow up with you after this webinar. All right, well, without further ado, I'm very excited to have our special guest speaker, Caroline Jens, join us today. Hi, Caroline. I'm going to go ahead and let you have the virtual floor from here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. It's so great to be here. I always love, partnering with Procare and being able to speak to your audience. Today, we're going to go through a really quick deep dive into the business side of childcare and how to be successful in that area. And so we've got a lot. That's probably my biggest downfall, is that I want to give you so much content. So we're going to move a little fast today. You do have a workbook, so feel free to navigate the workbook as we go through today's topic. And in there, there's going to be additional content that you can go back and relook if we go too fast today. But I am Caroline Jens. I'm the founder of Childcare Biz Help, and my husband and I started this company almost 9 years ago. And we work with existing childcare centers all over the U.S., and we also start childcare centers all over the U.S. We are that franchise alternative, but we love working with the childcare industry, and we love working with early childhood professionals and also advocacy groups and communities. And we're going to get a little bit into that today because that's a part of our solutions. So with that, I'm going to get started. So like I mentioned, we're going to do a deep dive into this turnkey process that we've branded, we've created after many, many years of working with childcare centers and seeing their struggles, but also seeing the ways that they're successful. So we're going to share some of those things with you so that you can, maintain a quality and profitable childcare center, that meets both the needs of your staff and your families. Because we, even if we're a nonprofit, we do want to be profitable so that we can reinvest back into our program, back into our teachers. And so we want to have both that quality and profitability. And so with that, we're going to go over some of 3 objectives. We're going to really touch on this turnkey success framework and teach you how to utilize that model for business success, and then help you gain some real specific strategies that you can take back to your school today. Now, when I usually start trainings, I like to dive into where we're at today in our industry, because I think it's really good to see that perspective of what is the state of our industry today. And then from that, we can build upon these new strategies. And like I said, we consult with existing child care centers all over the US, helping them become stronger businesses, build stronger cultures, all the things needed to be successful and thriving. And we're getting calls on a weekly basis from owners all over, really just at the end of their rope, wanting to close their doors, really struggling today. And I'm sure part of the audience today might be here because you might be one of those owners. You might be one of those directors that's burnt out, that's ready to just say, I'm done. And I get it. Like I said, having those phone calls every day with various leaders in our industry, our heart goes out to you. And so it's not all doom and gloom, though. That's why I have this image here. This gal, yes, it looks like there's a bomb going to explode, but she's putting out that wick. There is solutions to that uproar and to that uprising that we're seeing. But we are, let's be real, we are seeing more teachers that are coming on board that just don't have the experience. We're getting less people that are applying to our ads. When they do come, they're ghosting you. They're not staying past a few days or even past a week. Our staff call outs are super high, which is one of the reasons that our center directors are in the classroom. They're not sitting at their desk. They're not observing. They're not doing the things they want to be doing because they're in the classroom in ratio. We're even seeing an uproar in dress code issues. We're seeing a lot of pajamas coming into the workplace and really long fingernails. I don't know if you're experiencing that, but these are some of the things that we are seeing. Those mental health issues continue to be on the rise. And even though we're seeing a lot of areas still with long enrollment waiting lists, a lot of that has to do with the fact that our directors are not able to administratively answer those phones, sit at their desk, work on those emails and respond to those enrollments, or get out in the communities, do grassroots marketing. And so those waiting lists don't necessarily have to be there if we had the staff, if we had the directors that were able to spend that time and actually convert those inquiries. And because of all of those things, we are seeing more and more childcare centers close their door. It is a real thing right now. But like I said, it's not all doom and gloom. We are seeing a major, major move of advocacy for early childhood education, for our industry. We're being recognized as professionals, which is amazing. We have a lot of work to do yet. We're still considered daycare in a lot of areas instead of early childhood professionals. And we have very strong advocacy out there that's working hard to really bring that recognition to the world so that we get some of those federal funding dollars and additional grant funds. We do have a hardcore of just really passionate early childhood educators, people that truly are passionate about just caring for children. And that's why many of you are in this industry, is just because you came into it because you love those children. And it can be disheartening to see a lack of passion, but I want to encourage you that we still see a good number of teachers that are out there that are truly passionate about educating and caring for these kids. And even though we're seeing a lot of doors close in childcare centers, we are seeing a lot of centers expand and grow. And that leads on to our next slide. We have a lot of new people entering the industry. And what's really cool is that these are entrepreneurs that have never been in the space. They have never worked in a childcare center a day in their life, but they see this as a great industry to invest in. They see it as a need in their community. It's a lot of, moms and dads that can't find childcare. So they're like, we have to be a part of that solution. And so they're rising up and they're jumping in and saying, hey, we want to start childcare centers. We want to fulfill this need in our community. And we're seeing a lot of churches do the same thing. And what's great for our company, and I truly believe for our communities, is that there are a lot of entrepreneurs that are coming in and they're not wanting to go with a franchise. They're wanting to do something unique. They're wanting to create, they want to bring something special, something boutique to their communities, to their families. And so going a non-franchise route and starting their own brand, their own philosophy, their own model is something that our company helps with. And we're seeing a really unique turn in our communities, going from the large corporate and franchise models to these really boutique specialty type centers. So that's one of the really neat things that we're seeing going on in communities with new entrepreneurs. And then there's that business and community piece that's really taking hold right now. The grant money now has shifted to helping communities solve our childcare infrastructure problem. And that's requiring communities and business owners to collaborate with childcare centers. And so what we're seeing now is airports and universities. We just had a phone call from a hotel, a large hotel the other day, all seeing the fact that they are partly responsible for helping fix that infrastructure in our communities. We're seeing real estate developers, workforce groups, economic development groups. So all of this to say, even though there's a lot of burnout, there's some doors closing, there's some financial struggles, there are some really great things happening in our industry. So with that being said, knowing all of those things, my team over the last couple of years, the team here at Child Care Biz Help, we've really looked at the schools that have their doors open, the ones that are really thriving, the ones that are really excited about where they're at. We looked at all the qualities and things that they were doing in their organizations, and we made note of that. And then we looked at those schools that were struggling and why are they struggling? What are those root causes? And what can we learn from those successes and what can we learn from those pain points? And that's where we came up with this turnkey business success model. Now, when you think of turnkey, you're going to assume that it just means, that process is handed over to you and it becomes super easy and it doesn't require a whole lot of work. But in our case, that turnkey portion really is the fact that it is a proven solution. This is things that we're doing. This is a model that we're using in schools all over the US right now that are successful. It's not easy, so I'm not going to paint that picture. Childcare is hard. And so we are going to provide you with the tools today of this business success model. And if you can go back into your schools and utilize even one or two of these strategies and just to share those success stories of things that are going to work in your schools, we would really love. And there's 4 areas that we're going to talk about today when we talk about this business success model. So the first is having a really solid organizational foundation. The second is what we call the stellar backstage. And I'll explain what that means. The third is your growth path. And then finally, that community building piece. So those are the 4 different areas of the turnkey business success model that we're going to go over. All right, so when we talk about that first one, so that solid organizational foundation, this is what, when you build the solid foundation, your center is going to operate efficiently. You're going to be able to provide excellent care. You're going to be able to educate those children and create that supportive environment because you have those foundational practices in place. Your identity and various components are established. And when you do that, there's less confusion in your schools and you're going to operate way more efficiently. And so when we talk about building an organizational foundation at your schools, we're talking about that brand. What is your brand identity? What are the policies and procedures that you have in place? Do you have a communication structure set up? And then what is your technology infrastructure? All of those components go into building this solid organizational foundation. So we're going to get into each one of these. Now, your brand identity, it's funny when we have a brand new startup that is coming to us and we're having to, create a brand from scratch. It's hard to come up with like who you are as a company. Many of us have come into our schools, that brand is already established. They already have their vision, they have their logo, their tagline, all the things. But if you're brand new coming into this space, it can be really overwhelming to just define who you are. So it's really been an eye-opening for us as a company to see how important that brand identity is in the future success of a company. Now, if you're an existing childcare center, when we talk about brand identity, your brand can get stagnant. Your brand can get old. You cannot keep doing what you've been doing, for years and years and still really be relevant in your community. Your community is always changing. Your families are changing. Your needs are changing. So your brand identity sometimes has to shift a little. It doesn't mean that you're going to change your vision and your mission all the time. Doesn't mean you're going to change your core values per se, but it does mean that you're going to relook at who you are as a company, the programs that you offer, and then how is that brand getting integrated into your space, into your programming, into your hiring practices. Your brand is really something that will slightly shift throughout time based on what's going on in your community. We actually have a little church preschool right now that we're working with, and they're a part-time preschool. And what we're finding is in their community, there is a need for full-time care. And right now they don't service infants, and their community is desperate for infants. So we're having to go relook at their brand and say, what do we need to do to shift as a company to better meet the needs of our communities? So that's something that we're undergoing right now in one situation, but we're doing this in many other companies. And so I would like to challenge you to take some time and really think about what is it with your brand that you're offering that maybe you don't need to offer anymore. Maybe your community has shifted. In your workbook, there is a fun exercise that you can go through, and it's a checklist where you can be honest with yourself. Look at your logo, look at your website, look at your programming, all those things that make up your brand identity, and really ask yourself, is it really relevant today? And I would even challenge you to go look at your competitors and ask yourself, what are my competitors doing? What are people that are leading in this industry doing that maybe our brand is lacking? So that brand identity is really a critical piece of that organization's foundation. This is the checklist that I was talking about. So again, this is something that you can go through this list and say, is this something that positively affects our brand? Are we neutral in this area? Or hey, maybe our logo is really out of date. Maybe it really doesn't match who we are today. So that might be something that we need to refresh. That's stuff that we do all the time. We're always refreshing logos to make them more relevant. We're always looking at those websites to say, hey, does this really meet what our community is asking for? Now, the boring area are those policies and procedures, right? So we know that with that organizational framework, we have to really talk about those policies that are in place, the things that we have to ensure that we're meeting licensing rules and regulations, that our staff understands what their roles and responsibilities are, that we're able to keep a safe and healthy facility. But we're seeing some changes in these areas. So you'll see a lot of playbooks here in my list of policies. These are really strategies and action plans that are for very specific situations. So we're creating these specific for certain areas of our childcare centers, like our administration staff. It's a playbook just for them. How do they run that front office? How do they deal with those families? How are they billing? How are they interacting with the community? How are they managing that facility? All of those things are in that type of playbook. And again, do you have a marketing playbook? Do you know how you go out there and get your customer? Do you have playbooks in your classrooms on how to manage those classrooms for your, for your lead teaching staff? So these policies and procedures are so critical. And it's most importantly is that you cannot create these policies, these procedures, these playbooks once and then put them on a shelf. That is not going to do you any good. Your staff is going to be very much in the dark. It creates confusion and it creates mistakes, and it potentially could cause, health and safety risks. So what we suggest is at least once a year, you're going to go back through your policies and procedures, revisit these things, make sure they're still relevant. I would even go as far to say that every staff meeting, you should be at least discussing 1 or 2 policies in your staff meeting to keep them relevant and in front of your team. I would include little like did you knows in your weekly newsletters and maybe monthly challenges to keep those policies and procedures like out in front of your staff. Because like I said, oftentimes they go through onboarding, they get handed their employee handbook and they're told to read licensing rules, and then they're in the classroom and they never look at that stuff again. And so we really need to make sure that we're constantly putting these policies and procedures in front of our team so they remain in front of them, that they're always up to date, and that we really, make sure that we have a safe and healthy facility and workplace. Now, communication, this is the third component in that first organizational foundation. And a lot of us we know how to communicate within our organization, but we don't really explain the structure to that communication. And that's where a lot of confusion can come into play. And a lot of new hires get lost because they don't know how they should call in if they need to call in. If they have a problem, they don't know who to go to. They don't know how you want them to engage with those families in communication. They don't know how they're supposed to react and communicate during emergencies. And so when we look at creating a communications plan for your child care center, we want to look at a couple of things. How are you sharing important news that everyone needs to hear in your organization? Are you doing newsletters? Do they have a Slack channel? Are you using Microsoft Teams? Do you have your professional development days, staff meetings? How is that important news getting disseminated in your organization? And then between your staff and administration, when they want to call out, when they have a concern, when they want to grow in their position, when they want to give feedback, how are they supposed to do that? Do you have that laid out in your structure? And again, how do you want them to communicate with your families? Are you putting clear expectations? Procare has a parent app. And are you putting clear expectations on how you want your staff to be communicating through that parent app? Are you putting clear expectations on your director? If you're an owner in this meeting, if you're a regional director and you aren't putting clear expectations on your director on how often you want your director interacting with your families, you're missing out on that communication piece. And then again, that feedback mechanism. Now this one's big. Our employees want their voice to be heard, and so do our families. And so surveying is a great way for that feedback mechanism to happen, in addition to those one-on-ones and those observations in the classrooms. But consistent surveys need to be something that your organization has a plan in place and is actually, fulfilling that plan. We should be doing surveys during onboarding, quarterly at a minimum, and upon exit. That's both with our families and with our staff. So during that onboarding period, while they're with you on a quarterly basis, and when they exit. So survey as much as you can, gather those results, and just make sure you're sharing those results so that you can actually make a change in your organization from what you're hearing, and let them know that, yes, we did hear your voice. Here's what we've done because we heard your voice. And then finally, again, that emergency communication, whether it's a non-threatening situation, a life-threatening situation, and then how to communicate with media. This is an area that many of us forget that piece. So we might know how to handle an emergency, how to communicate internally, how to communicate with our families. But when the media comes into the picture, we don't know how to communicate with that media portion. And so we need to make sure that part of that foundational practice in our organization, we have that laid out too. And then our technology stack. So that could sound scary, especially in childcare, but childcare is very technology savvy right now. You know, we've really grown as an industry, and there's many different tools that we're seeing, you know, come into childcare centers. We're becoming very business minded in a good way. When we have these technology pieces, it allows us to step away from our desk, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, but it allows us to do other things that we need to do that are more important than spending time at our desk. So that's, you know, that CRM, that's the lead portion. So when those prospects are coming into your organization, do you have a tool for that? Your childcare management system, that's what Procare is. Do you have a Procare in place? You know, do you have a parent app? There's HR platforms now where they handle the time cards and the paid time off and the onboarding. There's learning management systems now. So for a lot of our clients, we're utilizing LMSs for that whole onboarding process. So a new hire comes on, they're going to go on a system. Part of their onboarding is going to take them through this training, and that's done on technology. If you've heard of One Place, they have that compliance monitoring. So it's a great tool to keep your school, your health and safety practices in the forefront. And then there's the surveillance cameras, the security, all the access control. Watch Me Grow has this really cool AI technology now. Part of that AI technology, again, allows that director to step away and still get alerted if there's safety notifications or, a child left alone in a classroom. These are benefits to the childcare industry now that we have. So even though we might be, not technology savvy, we do have many options now. And I just want to encourage you to really take a look at the vendors that are out there and see what can benefit your organization. Now, the second component of our, turnkey business success formula is having a stellar backstage. And I'm using the word backstage, but you could mix it with team, or some people call it your bench. But I want you to close your eyes for a minute and think about picturing a backstage. You're at a concert. If anyone's ever been to a performance, a play, and you've gone backstage, that's an area that's filled with mystery and opportunity. And it's where all the people are working behind the scenes, right? There's a lot of people moving. They're responsible for a lot of things. They're the executors. They're the ones that are planning, they're prepping, they're the brain work behind making sure that show is a hit. These are the leaders and educators in your childcare center. They are the backstage. The really stellar ones are the ones that don't have to be in the limelight. Just like the workers that are, backstage at a concert, you don't generally see them on the other side of the curtain, but they're very important in making sure that show is a hit. Same thing with your leaders and those stellar educators. They don't have to be in that limelight. Instead, they want to make sure their team looks good. So how do you attract those kind of people? Those really talented, high caliber professionals that know how to influence, that can set the vibe in your schools, and that can really tackle the logistics of all the foundational components of running a childcare center. That's why I use the word stellar backstage, because, man, our people are the most important part of our organizations, which is why many of us struggle today, because we just cannot attract the right people. So hopefully I can give you some tools today to walk away with. If you can walk away with one, I will be really excited for you to just go back into your school and actually implement. But I am by far, again, stressing that brand. And part of that is your website. And so when we look at our companies and we look at our website, what is that saying about our company? Is it outdated? Is it relevant? Are we attracting the millennial, the Gen Z? Who are we attracting with that website? And then do we have a career page? Some of us have career pages, but I'll be honest, I've gone on many of them and they're a job ad. That is not going to get me to want to apply at your organization. So again, if we want to attract that stellar employee, we want to use things like Get Ready to Love Mondays. That was something our new creative director, Mandy, came up with recently. And I just love it. Get ready to love Mondays. Perform your best in every part of life. And then how are you supporting them when they come into your organization? All of those things need to be on your website, need to be on your career page, need to be on your social media. So your social media is just as important as that website. And when I say social media, I'm going to challenge you today. It's Facebook, it's Instagram, but it's two other components that you might not be using. One is LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a very professional platform. We have to be using it. Many childcare centers are not using it yet, but it is definitely a very professional platform that you should be using to attract staff. And then same with Google My Business. So you may not know what Google My Business is, but when you do search for your company on Google, you will see your company's information on the right. And in there, you can put posts, just like you would post on social media. That's going to help you rank in Google. And you can put all kinds of cool things about the type of work environment that you create, Get Ready to Love Mondays, here's our benefits package. All of that information that you post in that Google My Business will eventually filter into Google. So when people are searching, they will find you. The other is your job ads. Are your job ads just reading like a job description? And I don't know, many of you, there's a lot of enhancements in Indeed right now. It's a love-hate relationship, right? But now you can really customize your company page on Indeed. So I challenge you to go in there and do a little research on it, but you can put all kinds of imagery, video now, and really beef up your company page and really stand out. So I challenge you to go in Indeed and start looking around at other competitors and see, how other competitors look on Indeed. And then ask yourself, do you stand out from them? Another big one is just, that networking piece. Are you out there building relationships in the community? Are you out there in the ECE world, just building connections, having conversations? And then what does your compensation and benefits package look like, and how are you sharing that? So again, we put together beautiful, beautiful collateral pieces of all of our benefits, which aren't all financial. A lot of it is, how are we going to support you on a personal side? Because when someone grows personally, it helps them professionally. I'm going to say that one more time. When someone grows on a personal level, they will perform better on a professional level. And so why are we not, as employers, trying to help our staff grow personally? Now, yeah, there's boundaries, right? We can't get into all the drama, but we can provide support. We can provide a life coach. This is something new. They called it a growth coach, where that growth coach, they have a growth coach assigned to a company. And basically it helps that individual increase in confidence, find purpose in life, learn how to communicate better. They're really that cheerleader for that person, teaching them those basic life skills. I thought that was a really cool benefit. And how cool to help your team grow, on a personal level. Our son, he does a wellness support in companies. And so he has an app where he can, go into companies, they can utilize his wellness app, and it's a fitness app. And, that physical wellness portion is so important. And it doesn't have to cost you a lot of money as a company. There's so many different things that we can do with wellness stipends. Increased time off. Now, this is a big one. This is the one that we're really seeing really unfold lately, where we're seeing way and way more time off, and families are actually okay with it. Not only are we seeing, where centers are closed basically from Christmas Eve until the new year, we're seeing a whole week closure in like that 4th of July week, and we're also seeing a fall week closure. And parents are okay with this. They're paying for that time. They understand that teachers are burnt out, and they just want to make sure their child has a place to go to. And so they're willing to make accommodations during those times so that staff retention increases. So there's a lot of different things that you can do to attract those people. You just have to package it right. You have to really think through what makes you different, how can you package it, and where can you put it out there in the world so that people will see it. And I know that makes it sound really easy, and I know it's not. I'm hiring for directors all the time. It is not easy, but hopefully it makes it a slight bit more successful for you. I know it will, because it has for us. Now, once you bring them in, how are you retaining them, right? We want them to stay longer than a day. We want them to stay longer than a week. We want them to be one of our core employees. The biggest piece is just that genuine connecting, really connecting, getting to know them right from the start. Be transparent, be real. And most importantly, do not compromise. And I know this is the hardest one because we are desperate for staff. And so oftentimes we're keeping that bottom 20% still on staff. And what that does, that toxic employee is ruining our organizations. And so when we compromise in that area and we keep those toxic staff, we're going to lose our good ones. And then the obvious, again, is just to invest in them. So on a personal level, a professional level, through mentorship programs, through career development. But the other two pieces I think are newer. People want to have clear expectations of what you want from them in the workplace. They want that. They need it to feel like they're successful. And that's one of the areas that we really struggle in, is just providing clear expectations of what you require in that position. And so I challenge you, really go through your job descriptions, really go through those playbooks in your classrooms, your performance coaching. Are you clear in your expectations? And then if you can teach your staff and empower them to make decisions, wow, that ups the game, because now they not only feel good because they can make a decision and they feel empowered, they feel successful, but they're not knocking on your door asking you for an answer for everything. And I see that every day with directors getting bogged down because people are constantly coming in their office, constantly asking them questions. If we could take the time to teach our staff how to make decisions, they can be empowered. So when someone comes up to you and asks you a question, turn it back into a question. Let them learn how to go through that thought process of problem solving. And then when they give you that answer, encourage them that they were right, or, hey, that was a great start. Here's some other things I would do. And then one of the things that we've created is this child care tornadoes flow chart. So it's all of those things in the major areas of how our school runs, of the things that could go wrong. A child escapes and runs down the street. A child gets sick in the classroom. A staff member falls and gets hurt. These are like tornadoes that can just ruin, just interrupt your day. We created this flow chart of, here, if this happens, here's how you could potentially resolve it yourself. Here's how you could resolve it in your classroom. And then if that can't happen, here's the next steps. And so what we've been doing is just training our staff every month at our staff meetings on how to, manage these different scenarios that we call tornadoes that disrupt your day. And again, that's just about empowering them. And when we have empowered staff, they feel like they're making a difference and that you're investing in them and that you believe in them. And those are the kind of staff that are going to stay with you. Now, our third component is the growth path. So this is a very much at that high level owner piece. They set that vision, they create that path of where the center needs to go. It is a critical piece of your business success model. But everyone is responsible for helping execute it. So there's that owner vision piece. You need to have financial sustainability, right, in order to grow. And then you need the staff in place to be able to do it. So when we talk owner vision, that owner vision is that it's a roadmap, right, of where the owner sees your company going. Are you going to just stay one location, which is totally fine? Maybe you just want to be one location. You're just going to maximize that one location. Maybe you want to open up new locations every year. Maybe you want to go buy 4 locations. Yeah, maybe you're going to create an exit strategy where you're going to turn this business over to your children. Or maybe you want to create an exit strategy where you're going to sell this off to a big box. All of that is part of this roadmap, this owner strategy. And the most important part of that is how that's cascaded down to the rest of the team, right? That owner can't just sit on that vision. That's something that has to be constantly fed into our teams. And then as directors, as regional directors, it's up to us then to filter that down into the classroom. Now, for that growth path to happen, we need to be able to afford it, right? And so the first thing about that I always start with, and people laugh at me because they're like, we're childcare. We're not salespeople, but we really need to have a culture of sales and marketing. It has to be a thread of who we are. I'll never forget when I worked at this childcare center in Wisconsin, my husband came in, and it was his first experience with childcare, and he came in and taught my leadership how to do sales, how to close the deal, how to take a customer through a tour and actually ask for that enrollment. It's that mentality that many of us in childcare just don't feel comfortable in. But it's okay. We're selling a service that is so beneficial to families, to communities. It's a great thing that we're doing, so it's an easy sell. So when I think about it, I don't think like I'm selling, right? And so every team member, to have this culture, every team member must have a feeling, a sense of responsibility that they're a part of attracting staff and attracting new families. And they have to know what is their part in that. A director's role in getting new families and getting new staff is going to be very different than a teacher in a classroom, but both have a role in that. And so it's up to us in order to create this culture of sales and marketing that every staff member understands their role and how to execute it, and that we train them on how to do it. A big part of it could just be the looks on our faces, when a tour comes in, when an interview comes in. Are staff on their cell phones? Are they in their pajama bottoms? All of those things, that's part of that sales and marketing culture. And then, when we look at, again, I think I had mentioned that sometimes when we're thinking of growth, we just think we need to open all these different locations. But it could just be, we need to look at our programming and say, hey, maybe we can switch things up and do X, Y, Z. And by doing that, we're going to make more money. And I know it's not about the money, you guys. So I don't want to get texts later saying childcare is not about the money, but it is about the money in a sense that money goes back into our programs, back into creating better classrooms, higher paid teachers. And so one of our newest team members here at Childcare Biz Help, Michelle, she's really taught me how to look at our programs, at our layouts, at our ratios, and really maximize those spaces so that we can not only maximize our profit, but meet the needs of our community even more. And so, maximizing your offerings, definitely a way to become financially sustainable. And then diversifying, are there things like enrichment program ownership that you can do, like buying a stretch and grow, or, buying soccer shots, or whatever it is that that you could potentially buy that aligns with childcare? Can you diversify? Can you sell courses on, early childhood classroom management? There's so many things that you can do. But no matter what your growth plan is, to be financially sustainable, you have to scale smart and you have to be prepared. So we have to make sure that we have that cash in the bank. We're planning for those rainy days. When we do all of those things, you could be in a position that many schools are in right now, where they're seizing the opportunities that are out there. They're buying school after school after school right now because they were smart with their finances throughout COVID. And now they feel financially ready to seize new opportunities. So all of that is really cool parts of your growth plan. But you can go, again, from a single location, maximizing that space, to as grand as you want to be. There's no wrong answer there. Now, to be able to do that, yes, staff is a critical piece of that, right? So we need to, when we're looking at our staffing and we look at our growth plan from a leadership standpoint, we need to look at who are we hiring, and are we being diverse when we hire? Meaning, are we hiring influencers, executors, relationship builders, visionaries, curriculum specialists, culture leaders, people that have different layers of skill sets? Because that's the only way you're going to be able to achieve certain growth plans, is if you have a diverse group of stellar backstage people. And then we have to look at career progression. So are there people in your organization now that you can take from the classroom up to, lead, up to administration, to now opening new schools for you? We had one location in Wisconsin. We planned to have 3. That was our growth plan. So what we did is we looked at our staff, our core staff, on how we could develop them to help us achieve that 3 location plan. And then we helped train them to get them to that level. And it worked. As a matter of fact, I know today that some of the people that went through our career progression, we're talking 15 years ago, they're now at some of those top positions in that school. So it's just cool to see when you invest into your team and when you really look long-term, it does great things for retention and for your company as a whole. And that final piece is, succession planning. So, does your owner plan to exit at one point? Do you have a regional manager that might move up or might leave one day? So we need to make sure that we're planning that succession for those critical top level positions so that we're not left stranded. You guys are doing great. We're almost done. This is the 4th and final, piece of, that turnkey business success model. And this is an area that we've been really focusing on. Again, it's this community building. And in today's hiring world, the hard times that we're having hiring staff, the state of the economy, we have to learn how to build community inside our schools and in our neighborhoods. The only way to do that is leadership has to get away from their desks. We need to create peer-to-peer support. We need to create advocacy and business partnerships. So I'm going to go through those really quick, guys. You've done great. So how do we step away from our desk? That is the question. So yeah, we want to get away from our desk. We don't want to be bogged down. And, we want to be able to, get in the classrooms. We want to be able to walk around the facilities. We want to set up meetings with parents. We want to laugh during our day. We want to go meet businesses. The only way we can do that is if we're hiring the right people, we're retaining those people, we're delegating, and then we're using technology. And we're holding people accountable. I can't tell you how many schools we deal with. That is their number one thing they cannot do, is hold their staff accountable. If we do not hold our staff accountable, we will never be able to step away from our desk, or we'll be in the classroom because everyone called out. So that is a major part We're not going to be able to build community in our schools or in our neighborhoods unless we can get our directors away from their desk. Now, peer-to-peer support, community is built with peers, teacher to teacher, leader to leader. And so you have to create this culture at your school, because we're seeing some cultures where it's very disrespectful. If you have a high call out school, that's disrespect. That there's no support peer-to-peer. You're just willing to call out whenever you want. We have to get past that culture. We want to see staff that are supporting each other. If you're seeing that, give rewards. Whenever you see people going above and beyond and showing respect and doing those types of things, make sure that you're publicly, giving them recognition and giving them rewards for doing that. We want to make sure that we're spotlighting the behaviors that are positive and not giving energy to those things that are bringing everybody down. Building a collaborative learning environment. So having curriculum workshops, maybe one evening a month. Allowing 30 minutes of your staff meeting every month to learning, to peer-to-peer support learning. Creating mentorship programs. All of those things, foster that peer-to-peer support environment, which are so important for building community. Your staff is hungry for building relationships. And so it's up to us to help facilitate that. And then advocacy. The grant money doesn't just come. There's people out there advocating on behalf of early childhood. And if they're not out there advocating, the school districts and other areas of the government budgets are going to get money that we desperately need in early childhood. So please, please, please join your coalition or your child care association. Get out there, help them with that policy awareness. I was just talking to someone in another state. They missed out on a very important bill that was just passed in their state, which is now giving more money to the school districts and taking more money away from the early childhood centers. It's because we do not have enough strong advocates. We have to bind together and build awareness for advocacy in our communities, guys. And then finally, business sponsorships. We are teaching our companies on how to put a presentation together, a pitch deck, where they can go to an employer and really explain what employer-sponsored childcare is and how they can contribute a portion of the cost of tuition for their staff. That's one way to help fix the high rising cost of tuition so that you as a child care center can price your tuition appropriately, where it's not just on the parents to pay, but we've got local business partnerships helping offset some of that cost. So we're going into businesses with a really nice package, and we're saying, here's all the different ways we can cross market, we can share resources, you can provide, money towards your employees' tuition. And then we're creating a special page on their website, where we can put that business partner on there. We can explain all the different things on how that partnership works. But this is a really important part of our marketing campaigns today for the schools that we deal with, because we're seeing that tuition's just getting too high, or it's not high enough because we're afraid to charge our families what we need to charge in order to keep our doors open. So guys, please, please, please work on this business sponsorship piece. As a matter of fact, one of the giveaways that I'm going to have, it revolves around this specifically. So we are going to give one giveaway where we'll create this whole sponsorship package for you as a company. So I'll get into that here as we conclude. So thank you guys. I know I've thrown a lot of stuff at you in a very short period of time, but I do believe if you tap into that, that turnkey business success model, you look at building that strong organizational foundation, you create a really stellar backstage team, you have a structured growth plan in your organization, and you learn how to build partnerships in the community. Those 4 areas are really going to help catapult your school level you up so that you can be a thriving school, so that you can keep your doors open. And in your workbook, there is a turnkey reflection at the end of your workbook to really kind of reflect on, how turnkey is your child care center really? Are there different areas that you could be working on? And in that, based on your responses, it will give you different action items that you can do, on those areas that maybe you scored lower in.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Caroline. This was a ton of great information, lots of great resources that we covered. And I wanted to let everyone know, attending now, that we actually do have a special promotion going on right now, where for those who decide to sign up with Procare as a new customer, we're actually offering the Turnkey Child Care Biz in a Box free with your sign up. And that is a $925 value. That is a huge, huge wealth of resources that you get to help you guys dive further into how you can provide a turnkey solution to get your business up and running with all of these great different foundational pieces that Caroline has talked about. So thank you again so much, Caroline, for joining us. And I wanted to also, before we get into our Q&A here, I wanted to announce the first winner of our first $100 Amazon gift card. Pamela Neal, you are the lucky winner. So we will follow up with you afterwards to make sure that you get that gift card. And just a reminder, we do still have one other gift card that will be given away to one of our survey respondents. So thank you all who participated and got an entry for that. Also, just wanted to cover some of these quick questions. I know we're already almost to the end of our time together. There was so much great information in here. So quick note, I saw someone ask, yes, there will be a replay available for this webinar. We will have that go out to you afterwards. So you will be able to get a link to that as well. There was one question here that maybe we'll have just a moment to get to in relation to some of the mentions of peer support and how we kind of navigate through the staffing situations at our centers. I know there's a lot about keeping the right folks and how we handle that. I think that one of our attendees here had a question in terms of how to have those conversations, maybe those harder conversations with your management and with your leaders when you feel like that's not necessarily being the case, that you are keeping the right folks, or that, or if you are inadvertently keeping the wrong folks. How do you kind of report or communicate or have those conversations?
A lot of it that we've seen is people making decisions out of fear. And so I always tell those top leaders to put themselves in that director's seat. They're fearful when they get rid of that toxic employee. They're looking at it as, now I have another vacancy in my staff. And so however you can communicate with them that you're there, you're going to support, you're going to help them hire, you can step in and help take some of that load off of them and let them, just empathize and feel their stress, but also let them know that we cannot lead in fear. We can't make these decisions in fear. And I think if we get that top 20% of our staff to rally around that director, you'll find that they'll step up just to get rid of that toxic employee. And I know it's not easy. I don't say that lightly at all.
Providing that culture is essential to elevating the leadership too, and giving them the trust and confidence in the people that they have to be able to listen to their words too when they need to say something. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Caroline. We're coming to time right now. So thank you everyone who submitted your questions and followed up with us. We will follow up with you again with more replay from the webinar and other resources. So once again, thank you so much. This has been such a great time with everybody here. And thanks again to our special guest, Caroline Jens from Child Care Biz Success. So we thank you guys. We hope you have a great day.
I just want to also note that you can scan here and get a free download of 1001 Child Care Recruitment and Enrollment Strategies. And then one person will win a drawing for us to produce this partnership package that I was talking about.
Oh, awesome. Yes, please take advantage of that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.